40 years ago, Stockholm hosted the first UN conference on the human environment. That was a huge step. In 40 years from now, Sweden has set its goal to have no net emissions of greenhouse gases. That is an ambitious task. But I thought I'd focus upon what Sweden hopefully has done, which might be an inspiration to other countries. And already in 1991, Sweden set itself its carbon tax. And this has provided a long-term policy orientation, created the investment framework and predictability for industry. And this has been one major reason for the emission reductions that we've achieved so far. But lowering or raising the taxes on pollution is not enough. And the other bit to the story is the green tax shift, where taxes on labor have been slowly made lower. So we'd be more than happy to discuss the learnings of the carbon dioxide tax with other countries, because that's something that we do not have to agree on internationally. It's just to go ahead and do it nationally. So due to the early climate policies and carbon tax, Sweden is now on track to meet its emission reduction goal until 2020 of lowering, just as Germany, climate gases by 40%. And as a way to reach the 2050 target of zero net emissions, we're now joining all the stakeholders in a process where we're going through sector by sector, what are the potentials and what are the necessary policy frameworks in order to take the coming steps in the future years. And a fulfillment of these climate goals, as everyone has mentioned, requires transformative changes. And of course, early movers, both in the business sector and on the national level, will be the ones who benefit the most. If we tap on the area of transport, with economic instruments, we've managed to quite quickly raise the level of eco-cars. But we're also looking to other countries to learn from them, and the French system, which is a kind of self-financed system where the more polluting cars pay more, but the income is then transferred to the smarter cars, is of course a dream for all the ministers of finance, which is always a key to making success. And then in terms of the governance structure, there might be one example that is worth mentioning in Sweden, and that's the environment quality systems with the 16 environment quality targets covering everything from chemicals, climate to biodiversity, which has been adopted by the parliament and continuously is what the government strives to achieve. And all the heads of the authorities are part of making the goal achievement possible. Coming back to going from kind of the broad holistic environmental area to the sustainable development arena, Lena Ek, together with the Minister for Development Cooperation, Gunilla Carlsson, 2 weeks ago hosted the Stockholm Plus 40 conference to send a message and gather stakeholders, and there were 40 ministers present, including Wen Jiabao, and the summary of the 2 ministers of the conference that are now sent to Rio is, of course, that we need to set the especially economic instruments that brings our economies more circular. Lena Ek, for example, yesterday said that she, to be clear, no longer uses the word waste, but only talks about resources as a way to show that this is where we're heading. So, oh, sorry, just to remember. Another thing I think which is very, very suitable to mention today, being invited by science, is that one of the other kind of recommendations to Rio and to, well, countries is to continue to be science-based, and the idea of planetary boundaries was complemented by the social boundaries perspective, which both these have to be taken into account. And Lena Ek feels that that is an important area of discussion. How do we set our targets? Sometimes there is a kind of linkage or mixage of targets and interpretation of science. But I think she would say that we need to be clear on our own interpretation of science, and then if we manage to set targets who are in par with science, that's another thing. And she has long been listening, for example, to those saying that 1.5 degrees is already dangerous enough. Then we have the other problem, as mentioned by Maria-Melina, saying that we might already have passed that. But this is, again, important in target setting, even more so when we've heard about the recent methane releases. Now to come back to what is it that is going to spur the change that we so desperately need. We know all about, or enough about, the catastrophic consequences of inaction. OECD gave us the last report on that. But in order to really unlock the possible changes, Lena Ek and the ministers present in Stockholm a few weeks ago were keen on having a stern 2.0 on the on the benefits of action. Whether this report is able to, if we now manage to make this happen, can also have a synergetic perspective and also integrate, for example, ecosystems use, it would be even more powerful. But I don't know if that's up to the research and the more kind of methodological people to say if this is possible. I will not mention one of the things that I promised to say on the climate. It's so long, so I tend to forget. But the climate and clean air coalition that was formed in Stockholm 2 weeks ago, that Maria-Melina mentioned so eloquently, and more nations are joining, and of course Sweden as one of the initiators to this would be more than happy, and I'm sure all who are environmentally aware would want many to take, as said very in a good way, that it's a complement to the important climate negotiations, not instead of. Thank you.